Hi ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wednesday. Today we're going to continue to work with percent. I came up with this fun lesson last night and threw it all together this morning, and I'm so excited to share it with you because today you guys are going to be practicing finding percent all around your home. So before we do that, you do have a small activity where you're going to work on finding percent in different situations. So that way then you can practice finding percent around your home. And I wanted to share with you my example that I came up with, which I used something around my home and I enlisted the boys' help. So we're going to be finding percent of the trees in our yard. And so I'm going to stop for just a minute so you can see the picture up close and do a quick count of how many trees are in our yard. Okay, so you should have counted that we have 18 trees. And I decided one of the pictures shows like what we call our wilderness. And there's a bunch of little saplings. And so I didn't count those. It was just ones that are more in growth or ones that we have planted ourselves. So what I decided to do to kind of differentiate between the two and so we could look at two different percents is the trees that flower in our yard and then the trees that either just have leaves or pine needles. So when looking at the percentage of our trees, the ones with leaves, we had 14 trees with either leaves or pine needles. And the ones that are flowering, hopefully you picked up on this, but those are the only ones that I'm pictured in. And then I put a little flower decal with it just to kind of mark that it's a flowering tree. And there were 4. So that means that we have a total of 18 trees in our yard. So we would want to write that as 14 out of 18 and 4 out of 18. Here's the deal, and this is one reason why I wanted to do this today, because not all situations are going to end up with having a denominator that can go evenly into 100 and we can find 100% like we did with the Skittles. So in this case, in order to find the percent of flowering trees, we're actually gonna have to do some division in order to get a decimal. And the line between the numerator and the denominator means to divide. So we're gonna go through and set this up for division. Now here's the cool thing, to make it a little bit easier, remember we can reduce our fraction. So if I have 4/18, 4 and 18 have 2 in common, so I can divide by 2 to get my, oh my goodness, my simplest form. My brain is just going kaput today. So we're going to divide each one by 2, and now I have 2/9. That's going to make my division a little bit easier. So remember, when we are trying to turn a fraction into a decimal, we are going to put the numerator inside the house and the denominator is going to knock at the door. So I have my 2 inside my house and my 9 is going to knock at the door. Now you'll remember or recall when we did this in class, okay, 9, hi kitty, 9 cannot go into 2 evenly, so we're going to have to add a decimal point and annex a 0. So I'm going to add a decimal and I'm going to bring that decimal straight to the top and then I'm going to annex a 0. So then I can think, okay, how many 9s can I get out of 20 without going over? Well, 9 goes into 20, 2 times. And 2 times 9 is 18. When I subtract, I'm left with 2. I can annex another 0 and bring it down, but already I see a pattern. I don't even have to continue on because I know as I continue to go, it's just going to be another 2 and 18, and then I'm going to be left with 2, and I'm going to need to annex another 0 and continue, but I'm going to get the same thing over and over. So that means that this 2 up at the top is just going to continue to repeat. So my version here, decimal, would be a 2 repeating. If I want to turn this into a percent though, this is where percent is a number out of 100. And right now I've got 2/10, but it's a repeating 2/10. And this would be like 22/100, but I know it's going to be repeating. So when I want to write that as a percent, if I want to say 22/100, but I know that 2 is going to just keep on repeating, and then I can add my percent sign. So I'm now showing 22 and 2/10%, and that's the percentage of how many flowering trees I have in my yard. Now, to make this a little bit easier, I could just go ahead and round it to 22% because we don't need to be super accurate with this right now. So it would be like saying that we have 22% of my trees are flowering trees. So that would mean my trees with leaves and pine needles would be, oh, do quick math, 78%? 78%, or actually just a little bit less than 78%. So if I wanted to model this on my tape diagram or my hundreds chart, this is where we can say, okay, I'm looking at, if I've divided this up, I know 100% would be 18 out of 18. And my amount of leaves on the tree, or trees with just leaves, no flowers, would be 78%, and 14 would fall in the middle of 15 and 12. Just like 4 is going to be closer to my 3 than it is my 6. So I can actually model this on here and shade this and this part in and show that this is representing 22%. I can also model this on my hundreds chart where I can show there's 10%, 20%, and 22%. And then what's not shaded in would be the percentage of trees that don't flower in my yard. So this is just a fun little lesson to get you started and get you thinking, because you're going to be looking around your home today and finding different scenarios of how you can find percents. And remember, if we get into this situation where you have a repeating or a decimal, we don't need it to be perfect. We just want to think about our rounding rules and what would be most accurate. And 22.2% repeated, I can just say, oh, well, I would round down to 22%. So we are going to do some practice beforehand, and you're going to see a few situations where we can model using a tape diagram. You can model using a hundreds chart. We can model it showing it as a fraction or a decimal or a percent. You can draw pictures to show as well, thinking about parts and whole, that there are 18 trees in my yard. That was my whole. And my part that I was wanting to look at today was how many of those trees, or what's the percentage of those that are flowering. Message me if you have any questions today. I'm so excited to see what you guys come up with. Have a great day of learning.